Welcome to Better Call Saul Season 5 Recap. I have already recapped some TV series on this channel, ranging from fantasy to drama series. So if you want to be updated on a series before starting a new season, consider subscribing and liking to help me grow this channel. Now let's get back to Saul Goodman. To cover up the real story, Gus brings Bolsa and Lalo to the meth lab construction site and tells them that it is a chicken chiller for his restaurants, which was being built by Ziegler and supervised by Mike. However, a wary Lalo remains suspicious, and Gus stops the construction as a precaution and has Mike send the German crew back home. Angry for what he had to do to Ziegler, Mike refuses payment from Gus. Meanwhile, Saul keeps selling his prepaid phones to boost his reopened law practice and fakes a camera confrontation with Bill to gain publicity. At one of the Salamanca's drug houses, Domingo is arrested when the cops find him with several bags of cocaine. Nacho and Lalo witness this, but before the cops can enter the house, Nacho manages to free run into the apartment and retrieve the main drugs, gaining Lalo's respect. At the courthouse, Saul tries to get some deals out of Suzanne, but she's unwilling to settle. To persuade her, he arranges for them to be stuck in the elevator together, and eventually gets his deals. After leaving the courthouse, he's taken by Nacho. Jimmy is then taken to Lalo, who wants him to free Domingo. However, to pull this off, he makes a deal in which Domingo becomes a confidential informant for Schrader and Gomez, and reveals Gus's dead drops. Nacho relays this information back to Gus, who decides not to interfere, since Lalo would otherwise suspect a mole in his organization. At the courthouse, Kim is called to the location of where a new Mesa Verde call center is to be built. However, a homeowner, Mr. Acker, who lives smack dab in the middle of the land, refuses to relocate, even after Kim goes out of her way to find new homes for him. Over lunch, Howard offers Jimmy a job at HHM, but Jimmy reacts in a weird way by later that night throwing bowling balls at Howard's car. Meanwhile, Kim tries to persuade Kevin to build the call center on another piece of land, but Kevin refuses to be bullied away. Desperate, Kim tells Jimmy to be Saul Goodman and represent Acker in order to convince Kevin that the call center should be built on the other site. Later that night, Gus makes sure that the DEA find the dead spots, while Mike is beaten and stabbed by some youngsters and wakes up in an unknown village. After he is treated by Dr. Goodman, Mike finds out that the village is financed by Gus and dedicated to Gus's friend Max. When Gus arrives, he asks Mike to help him get revenge on the Salamancas. As Saul Goodman, Jimmy plays cheap tricks on the Mesa Verde construction crew, delaying the project. Kim suggests to Kevin that because Jimmy is on the case, she should withdraw to avoid a conflict of interest, but Kevin dismisses that. She and Jimmy then hire Sobchak to find dirt on Kevin. Eventually, Kim decides not to blackmail Kevin, but at a meeting with Mesa Verde, Jimmy informs them that he wants $4 million, or he will publish information which states that Mesa Verde's logo is stolen from a photographer, and also release TV ads in which the bank's founder, Kevin's father Don, will be made a fool of. Pressured by all of this, Kevin agrees to a deal in which Acker and the photographer are fairly paid. Kim is furious at Jimmy and tells him that they should either break up or get married. Meanwhile, Mike points the police to Lalo, who is then arrested for the murder of Fred. Kim and Jimmy get married to gain spousal privilege. Later that day, she and Rich visit Kevin and apologize for the Acker case, but convince him to not fire them. Meanwhile, Saul manages to get a bail option for Lalo, but the bill is set at an astounding $7 million. However, a satisfied Lalo says he can pay that. Howard then confronts Jimmy and tells him the HHM offer is revoked due to Jimmy's uninterested attitude, to which Jimmy responds by saying that HHM is nothing to him. At Madrigal, Gus and Lydia meet with its CEO, Peter, and inform him that the Superlab project has been delayed. Lalo offers Jimmy $100,000 and instructs him to meet the cousins at a deserted location to pick up the money. However, soon after the cousins hand over the money, Jimmy is ambushed by a dozen gunmen. They plan to execute him, but he is saved by Mike, who was following them. One of the gunmen escapes in the last functioning vehicle, forcing Mike and Jimmy to walk across the hot and dry terrain. The gunman continues his search for them, but a desperate Jimmy acts as bait, while Mike takes out the gunman, but by doing so also destroys his vehicle, leaving them stranded. Finally, they find cell reception and are picked up by Tyrus and Victor. Gus then realizes that Balsa was behind the attack, so as to prevent Jimmy from bailing Lalo and thus protecting Gus. Meanwhile, Jimmy lies about the events to both Kim and Lalo in order to hide Mike's involvement, while Kim quits Schweikart and Coakley to focus on pro bono work only. Jimmy has Lalo freed, and Lalo decides to return to Mexico, but on his way finds Jimmy's shot up car. Suspicious, he returns to Jimmy's apartment to validate his story, but Kim steps in and successfully convinces him that after everything Jimmy did for him, he should trust him. Eventually, Jimmy tells Kim the truth, while Lalo has Nacho take him home to his house in Mexico. Gus informs Nacho that he will be sending a death squad to kill Lalo, and that Nacho must open the gate to let the assassins in. Later, Lalo introduces Nacho to Don Eladio, with Nacho telling the boss his expansion plans for the Salamanca business. That night, Nacho opens the back gate and a hit squad moves in. However, a resilient Lalo manages to kill all of the hitmen except for one, whom he instructs to call his employer and report that Lalo is dead. Thank you all for watching and see you on the next recap.